In the vibrant heart of Atlanta, the sun poured its golden rays over the sprawling expanse of the park, illuminating the laughter of children and the cheerful chatter of families enjoying the warm day. Among them were Marcus and his adopted son, Ethan. Marcus, a tall man with a warm smile and an easygoing nature, held the string of a brilliantly colored kite, its fabric a patchwork of reds, yellows, and blues that danced wildly against the backdrop of a deep azure sky. Ethan, a small boy with tousled blonde hair and eyes that sparkled with mischief, tugged eagerly at Marcus's hand, his excitement palpable. "Can I hold it, Dad? Please," he pleaded, bouncing on the balls of his feet. "All right, buddy," Marcus chuckled, carefully handing the string over to Ethan, who immediately took off running, squeals of delight escaping his lips as the kite soared higher. "Just remember to keep it steady. Look at it go," Ethan shouted, his laughter ringing out, blending seamlessly with the rustling leaves and distant sounds of joy that filled the park. His spirit was infectious, and Marcus couldn't help but beam with pride as he watched his son revel in the moment, the bond between them glowing brighter than the sun overhead. As Ethan ran, Marcus took a moment to appreciate the beauty of the day. Families gathered for picnics, couples strolled hand in hand, and the air was filled with the scent of blooming flowers and freshly cut grass. It was a day that felt perfect in every way, a testament to the love and joy that had blossomed in his life since adopting Ethan. "Dad, watch me," Ethan called, swinging the kite in a wide arc, his laughter echoing through the park. Marcus lifted his hands in encouragement, his heart swelling with joy. "You're doing great, Ethan. Just like a pro," he cheered, feeling an overwhelming sense of gratitude for the little boy who had brightened his world. Nearby, however, a different scene was unfolding. Sarah, a middle-aged woman with dark sunglasses perched on her nose and a scornful frown etched into her features, observed the duo from her picnic blanket. Her lips curled into a tight line as she narrowed her eyes, watching every movement with a gaze that radiated suspicion. "What's going on over there?" she muttered to herself, her voice barely above a whisper, yet filled with a disdain that was hard to miss. "That doesn't look right." As she sat with her arms crossed, her mind raced, plagued by unfounded assumptions. To her, the sight of a black man playing with a white boy didn't fit the narrative she had constructed in her head. It was a moment of pure joy, but to her, it appeared sinister, a distortion of reality seen through the lens of her deep-rooted prejudices. "Just look at them," she scoffed, shaking her head in disbelief. "What's he doing with that child?" Her thoughts spiraled further into a whirlpool of misguided concern and judgment, completely overlooking the innocent nature of their play. The laughter of Marcus and Ethan, which had once seemed like music to her ears, now struck her as jarring. Meanwhile, Marcus was oblivious to the tempest brewing just a few feet away, his focus solely on Ethan, who continued to run in circles, the kite trailing behind him like a vibrant comet. "Catch me, Dad," Ethan laughed, his face lit up with pure happiness, and Marcus felt his heart swell with warmth. "All right, I'm coming," he called, his voice filled with mirth as he took off after Ethan, their joyous laughter intertwining in the air. In that moment, nothing else mattered. It was just a father and son, sharing a simple yet profound connection, celebrating life in all its glory. But as the breeze carried their laughter through the park, the shadows of misunderstanding loomed larger, waiting for the moment to intervene, unaware of the ripple effects that would soon unfold from a single moment of prejudice. In the heart of a vibrant park in Atlanta, where laughter mingled with the rustling leaves, Sarah stood amidst the cheerful chaos, her brow furrowed in disapproval. The sun bathed the park in a warm glow, children ran freely, and the air was filled with the joyous sounds of play. Yet, for Sarah, the scene unfolding before her was anything but innocent. She watched Marcus, a black father, as he swung his adopted son Ethan high into the air. The boy's laughter rang out like music, pure and unrestrained, but Sarah's heart raced with an unease she couldn't justify. "Look at them," she muttered under her breath, her voice laced with a tremor of unjustified fear. "What kind of father plays like that?" Her fingers tightened around her phone, the device suddenly feeling like a lifeline in the face of her mounting anxiety. In that moment, a wave of misguided concern washed over her, and she pulled up the numbers on her screen, dialing 911. Her voice trembled as she reported what she perceived as a suspicious situation unfolding in the park. "There's a man with a child. I think something's not right," she stammered, her tone a mix of fear and certainty. The operator on the other end tried to calm her, but Sarah's mind was made up. She was convinced she was doing the right thing, her prejudices clouding her judgment. Meanwhile, Marcus remained blissfully unaware of the brewing storm. He sensed a shift in the atmosphere but brushed it off, focusing instead on Ethan, who had just tumbled into the grass, giggling uncontrollably. "You all right, buddy?" Marcus chuckled, extending his hand to help Ethan up. The boy wiped the grass stains from his shirt, his blue eyes sparkling with delight. "I'm okay, Dad. Let's fly the kite again," Ethan exclaimed, his spirit undampened. Marcus smiled, his heart swelling with pride as he watched his son's innocent exuberance. As the two resumed their play, the sun shone down, momentarily shielding them from the harsh reality that was about to unfold. But the atmosphere grew heavier, a palpable tension hanging in the air as sirens wailed in the distance. Marcus glanced up, his heart racing, sensing that something was amiss. His eyes widened as police cars pulled into the park, their lights flashing ominously against the bright day. "Dad, what's that noise?" Ethan asked, his small hand clutching Marcus's leg, confusion etched across his cherubic face. "I don't know, son. Just stay close to me," Marcus replied, his voice steady, though his mind raced with questions. He felt a knot tighten in his stomach, a sense of foreboding creeping in as he noticed the officers approaching, their expressions cautious, hands hovering near their belts. "Sir, can we have a word?" one of the officers called out, his tone measured but serious. Marcus's heart sank as he nodded, instinctively pulling Ethan closer. The innocent joy of their day was quickly being overshadowed by an unknown threat. "Is everything all right?" Marcus asked, a hint of concern creeping into his voice. The officers exchanged glances, their eyes darting towards Sarah, who stood a few feet away, her self-satisfied smirk betraying the chaos she had set in motion. "We received a call about a suspicious situation," the second officer explained, his gaze shifting to Ethan, who looked up at his father with wide eyes. "Can you tell us what's happening here?" Marcus took a deep breath, his heart pounding in his chest as he glanced at Ethan, who still clung to him, sensing the tension that had suddenly engulfed their playful afternoon. "We're just playing, officer. This is my son, Ethan. We were flying a kite and having a good time." Ethan, sensing the gravity of the situation, piped up, "Yeah, we were just playing." His innocent voice cut through the tension, but Marcus felt the weight of the scrutiny upon him, a chill of injustice settling in his bones. As the officers listened, their expressions softened slightly, yet the air remained thick with uncertainty. Marcus could see their hesitation, the internal struggle of duty versus the clear bond he shared with his son. But as Sarah stood nearby, her posture rigid and her expression smug, Marcus felt a surge of determination. He would not let this moment define him, nor would he allow his son to feel the weight of prejudice that had no place in their world. The cheerful laughter of Marcus and Ethan echoed through the vibrant park, a stark contrast to the tension that was about to unfold. The sun hung high in the azure sky, casting warm rays on the duo as they played, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing just a few feet away. The moment Marcus looked up, drawn by the wailing of sirens in the distance, a knot formed in the pit of his stomach. The cheerful ambience of the park quickly transformed as police cars pulled into the gravel path, their bright lights flashing like ominous beacons. "What's going on, Dad?" Ethan's voice trembled slightly as he clutched Marcus's leg, his innocent blue eyes mirroring confusion. Marcus knelt down to his son's level, brushing a few strands of hair from Ethan's forehead. "I'm not sure, buddy. Just stay close to me, all right?" Marcus replied, his voice steady despite the unease swirling around them. As the officers approached cautiously, Marcus felt a rush of adrenaline. Their hands hovered near their belts, a clear sign of tension in the air. He could sense the curiosity and concern of the other parkgoers, their eyes darting between him and the officers, wondering what was unfolding before them. The joyful day had taken a sharp turn, and Marcus felt the weight of every gaze upon him. "Excuse me, sir," one of the officers said, his tone professional but laced with an undercurrent of suspicion. "We received a call about a suspicious situation involving you and your son." Marcus's heart raced, his mind racing through 1,000 thoughts in an instant. "Suspicious? We're just playing," he said, gesturing towards the kite that still danced in the breeze. "Look, we're just having a day out in the park." Ethan, still clinging to his father's side, looked up with wide eyes. "Dad, what did we do wrong?" His voice was a mix of fear and confusion, and Marcus felt a pang of protectiveness wash over him. "Nothing, Ethan. Nothing at all," Marcus assured him, his voice firm yet gentle. He turned back to the officers, trying to project calm. "We're just enjoying a day together. I adopted Ethan a few years ago. He's my son, and we were just having fun." Meanwhile, Sarah stood a distance away, a self-satisfied smirk plastered across her face. She felt vindicated, believing she had acted in the best interest of the child she presumed was in danger. Oblivious to the chaos her actions had instigated, she crossed her arms, watching the scene unfold with a sense of self-righteousness. "I just thought it looked suspicious," she muttered under her breath, her voice barely audible. But deep down, she felt a swell of pride for having taken action, convinced she had done the right thing. "Ma'am, could you please step over here?" One of the officers called out to Sarah, his tone now more authoritative. The shift in focus made her heart race, the reality of the situation beginning to dawn on her. As Marcus stood there, his dignity feeling challenged under the scrutinizing gaze of bystanders, he maintained his composure. He could feel the tension rising around them, and he silently vowed to protect Ethan at all costs. "We're just having fun, and it's important to understand that assumptions can lead to misunderstandings," he stated, his voice steady as he glanced toward the officers, hoping they would see the truth in his words. "Sir, we just need to clarify a few things," one of the officers said, glancing between Marcus and Sarah. "Can you tell us what happened here today?" "Of course," Marcus replied, taking a deep breath to steady himself. "Ethan and I came to the park to fly a kite, have some fun, and enjoy our day. That's all there is to it." The officer nodded, but Marcus could see the uncertainty in his eyes. He could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on him, the palpable tension hanging in the air as the crowd began to whisper among themselves. Each word, each glance, seemed to amplify the situation, and Marcus knew he had to remain strong for Ethan. "Dad," Ethan whispered, his small voice barely audible above the murmurs of the onlookers. "Are we okay?" "Yes, buddy," Marcus reassured him, placing a hand on his son's shoulder. "We're okay. Just remember, love always wins in the end." Marcus stood in the park, the sun casting a warm glow over their joyful play. He adjusted the bright red kite string in his hand, watching as the vibrant colors danced against the azure sky. Laughter erupted from Ethan, who swung back and forth on the swing, his little legs pumping energetically. "Higher, Dad, higher," Ethan called out, his blue eyes sparkling with delight. "You got it, champ," Marcus replied, pushing him a little higher. The sound of Ethan's giggles filled the air, drawing the attention of families nearby, their smiles reflecting the innocence of the moment. However, from a distance, Sarah's expression was anything but joyful. Her eyes narrowed, and a frown creased her forehead as she observed the two. "Why is that man with that boy?" she muttered to herself, her heart racing with preconceived notions that bubbled to the surface. She leaned forward, her phone gripped tightly in her hand, feeling a sense of urgency that wasn't warranted. "Dad, look at me," Ethan shouted, his laughter echoing as he swung high, his hair flying in the wind. Marcus beamed at his son, his heart swelling with pride, unaware of the storm brewing nearby. As Ethan tumbled onto the grass, laughing, Marcus rushed over to help him up, oblivious to Sarah's watchful gaze. Suddenly, the sirens wailed, slicing through the cheerful sounds of the park. Marcus looked up, his heart skipping a beat as he saw police cars pulling in. "Ethan, stay close to me," he instructed, a knot forming in his stomach. The joyful atmosphere shifted dramatically as the officers approached, their expressions serious, hands hovering near their belts. "Is everything all right, officer?" Marcus asked, his voice steady, though anxiety gnawed at him. Ethan clung to his leg, confusion etched across his young face. "Sir, we received a call about a suspicious situation involving you and your son," one officer replied, his tone cautious. Marcus felt his heart race as he turned to Ethan, who looked up at him with wide eyes filled with concern. "Suspicious? We're just playing," Marcus explained, his composure a fragile facade. "This is my son, Ethan. We're just having fun." The officers exchanged glances, their eyes flickering between Marcus and Ethan. "Can you tell us what's happening here?" another officer asked, still keeping a professional distance. "Of course. We're just enjoying a day in the park together," Marcus said, his voice warm, though tinged with frustration. "Look at him. He's my son." He gestured towards Ethan, who was now trying to regain his composure, brushing off the grass from his shorts. At that moment, Sarah approached, her expression shifting from confidence to hesitance. I thought something was wrong," she stammered, suddenly aware of the weight of her actions. The officers turned their attention to her, their expressions stern. "Ma'am, can you explain why you called us?" one officer asked, a note of challenge in his voice. "I just saw them together and thought." "I thought it was suspicious," Sarah said defensively, her eyes darting between Marcus and the officers. "I didn't mean to cause any trouble." "Did you consider the implications of your call?" the officer pressed, his tone firm but not unkind. Marcus felt a surge of indignation but held his ground, focusing on Ethan, who looked up at him with trust. "Dad, are we going to be okay?" Ethan asked, his voice small, tugging at Marcus's heartstrings. "Absolutely, buddy. Just stay close," Marcus reassured him, kneeling down to meet his son's gaze. "No one can take away our love." As the officers continued to question Sarah, Marcus could feel the eyes of the parkgoers upon them, a mix of curiosity and concern. He stood tall, determined to protect Ethan's innocence, even as the weight of the situation pressed down upon him. "Can't you see this is my son?" he said, his voice steady, though his heart raced. "We're just having a good time. There's nothing wrong here." Ethan squeezed his father's leg tighter, sensing the tension but trusting Marcus to keep him safe. As the words hung in the air, Marcus felt a profound sense of responsibility, vowing silently to shield his son from the prejudiced world that still existed outside their joyful bubble. The bond between them was undeniable, yet the looming specter of misunderstanding threatened to overshadow their day. Sarah looked on, her conviction faltering as the weight of the moment bore down on her. Marcus stood firm, his dignity intact, ready to confront whatever challenges lay ahead. The tension in the park hung heavy as the police officers gathered around Marcus and Ethan, their presence a stark contrast to the joyous atmosphere that had filled the air moments before. Marcus, his heart pounding, felt the weight of the world pressing down on him. He glanced down at Ethan, who looked up with wide, confused eyes, clutching his father's leg tightly. The innocence in the boy's gaze pierced Marcus's heart, igniting a fierce protectiveness within him. "Dad, are we in trouble?" Ethan's voice was barely above a whisper, laced with uncertainty. Marcus knelt down, cupping Ethan's face in his hands. "No, buddy. Everything is going to be all right. Just stick close to me, he reassured, forcing a smile in hopes of calming the boy's fears. Nearby, Sarah stood with her arms crossed, the remnants of her smug confidence beginning to falter. As the officers spoke to her, Marcus could see the way her expression shifted from self-righteousness to discomfort. The officers, a mix of seasoned and rookie, exchanged glances, their expressions betraying their unease as they began to question Sarah. "Ma'am, can you tell us what led you to make the call?" One of the officers probed, his voice steady but firm. I saw something that didn't look right," Sarah stammered, her bravado cracking under the scrutiny. "That man was swinging his son too high. It just didn't seem safe." "That seems like a rather subjective assessment," the second officer replied, raising an eyebrow. "Do you have any evidence that suggests they were in any danger?" As Sarah opened her mouth to respond, the first officer continued, "Because from what we can see, this appears to be a father and son enjoying a day out together, no different from any other family in the park." The crowd that had gathered began to murmur, their whispers a mixture of disbelief and indignation. Marcus could sense the shift in the atmosphere. People were beginning to see Sarah for who she was, and the prejudices that had driven her actions were laid bare. He clenched his fists, feeling a cocktail of anger and sadness bubbling within him. "Why would you call the police on us?" Marcus finally spoke up, his voice steady yet tinged with hurt. "What about our interaction made you feel threatened? Just because I'm black and he's white?" His words hung in the air, heavy with the weight of truth. Sarah opened her mouth to defend herself, but the officers cut her off. "Ma'am, it's important to understand that false reports can have serious consequences. We take these matters seriously." At that moment, Marcus felt a flicker of hope. Perhaps this was the moment where ignorance would be confronted, where change could begin. The officers continued, "We need to ensure that everyone here understands the importance of not jumping to conclusions based solely on appearances." Sarah's confidence crumbled further, her face paling as the reality of her actions dawned on her. "I didn't mean," she began, but the words fell flat, drowning in the mounting tension. "Your concerns may have been misinterpreted," the second officer stated, his tone softer now, "but it's crucial to reflect on what led you to this point. We all have biases. It's our responsibility to challenge them." As the crowd listened intently, Marcus caught sight of a few sympathetic nods among the onlookers, people who had also witnessed the joy he shared with Ethan moments before. He felt a wave of solidarity wash over him, the shared understanding that their bond transcended the prejudices that sought to divide them. "Is this how we want our community to be?" Marcus asked, his voice rising, echoing through the hushed park. "We should be celebrating love and connection, not tearing each other apart based on assumptions." Sarah's silence spoke volumes, her facade crumbling as the weight of her actions bore down on her. The officers, now with a clearer picture of the situation, exchanged glances, understanding the gravity of what had transpired. "Ma'am, we need you to understand the implications of what you've done," one officer said firmly, but without malice. "This isn't just about you. It affects everyone here." As the conversation unfolded, Marcus held Ethan close, feeling the warmth of his son's small body against his side. In that moment, he knew they would emerge from this stronger together, a beacon of hope in a world that often forgot the power of connection. The laughter they had shared was not lost. It was a reminder of what truly mattered. As the tension in the park reached a fever pitch, the officers exchanged uneasy glances, their duty clashing with the palpable bond between Marcus and Ethan. The crowd, once filled with laughter and light, now hovered on the fringes, their expressions a mix of curiosity and disbelief. The officers, aware of the eyes upon them, approached Sarah, their authority underscored by the seriousness of the situation. "Ma'am," one of the officers began, his voice level yet firm, "we need to ask you a few questions about your call." Sarah's confidence, which had seemed unshakable moments before, began to waver under the weight of the officer's scrutiny. "I was just trying to protect that boy," she stammered, her voice shaking slightly. "I thought—" "You thought what?" interrupted the second officer, his brow furrowing in disbelief. "That a father playing with his son was suspicious? Do you know how that sounds?" The crowd murmured amongst themselves, the whispers growing louder as they absorbed the unfolding drama. Marcus stood tall, his heart racing, yet he maintained an unwavering calm. He glanced down at Ethan, who had pressed against his leg, his small fingers clutching tightly. "It's okay, buddy. Just hold on to me," Marcus whispered, kneeling to meet his son's wide eyes. "Dad, are they going to take her away?" Ethan asked, his voice barely above a whisper, innocence lacing every syllable. "Maybe," Marcus replied, his tone gentle yet steady. "But remember, it's important to understand why things happen. We have to be brave, no matter what." As the officers continued to question Sarah, the weight of her actions began to settle heavily upon her. "I didn't mean any harm," she pleaded, her voice rising in pitch. I saw a black man with a white child, and I thought..." "Thought what?" "That he was a danger to his own son." The first officer challenged, his patience thinning. "You need to understand that jumping to conclusions like that can have serious consequences. Not just for you, but for everyone involved." With the officers now preparing to take her into custody, Marcus felt a wave of relief wash over him. He had feared for the safety of his family, but now, as he looked around, he saw the support in the eyes of those who had gathered. There were nods of agreement, murmurs of understanding. The crowd was beginning to shift, to stand against the prejudice that had tried to overshadow an innocent day. "Marcus," one of the bystanders called out, a woman in a bright yellow dress, stepping forward. "We're with you. This isn't right." "Yeah," shouted another voice, a man holding a child on his shoulders. "This is a family park. We should be celebrating love, not tearing it apart." Ethan's eyes sparkled with a mix of confusion and admiration as he heard the support for his father. "Dad, they're on our side," he exclaimed, his small voice cutting through the tension. "Yes, they are, Ethan," Marcus replied, pride swelling within him. "See? Love and understanding always win in the end." As the officers finally placed handcuffs on Sarah, the reality of her actions hit her hard. She stood there, her face flushed with shame, as the crowd began to disperse. The air was thick with the unspoken acknowledgement of the biases that had led to this moment, but there was also a sense of hope. "Do you understand now?" the second officer asked her as they led her away, his voice a mixture of disappointment and concern. "This isn't just about you. It's about how we treat each other." Marcus watched as Sarah was escorted towards the police vehicles, the gravity of her actions settling in the atmosphere. He turned to Ethan, who was watching the scene unfold with wide, innocent eyes. "Remember what I told you, Ethan," Marcus said softly. "Always seek to understand before you judge. We can change the world, one heart at a time." With a gentle squeeze of Ethan's shoulder, Marcus began to walk away from the chaos, their bond unbreakable and stronger than ever. The park, though touched by the shadows of prejudice, now also glimmered with the light of understanding and resilience, a testament to the power of love in a world still grappling with its biases. Leave your like, subscribe to the channel, activate the notification bell, and watch this next story, which is very exciting.